Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome episode of 3 Minute Marketing. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic, veteran growth junkie. 3 Minute Marketing, we interview some of the world's foremost thought leaders in terms of growth marketing across disciplines, across channels, into micro, bite sized interview value bomb type sequences. Super excited to be here today, joined by the one and only Miss Lynne Capozzi. Lynne is basically a badass. Lynne has extensive experience, across pretty much the entire spectrum of marketing, from brand and brand building all the way down to growth and direct response and demand gen, and you name it. Basically, she knows it. But she's really, really strong with regard to B2B, SaaS and technology. She comes from IBM and was at various other firms. Currently CMO at Acquia, who is the leading provider of hosting and related services for Drupal. Lynne, please correct anything I may have said wrong or missed there, and then we'll get right down into the big question for today.
Hi, Chris. No correction required, especially the badass part.
You like that?
I do.
Nice. All right, very good. So the big question that we have for you today is around messaging, particularly in a B2B world where you've got multiple different user types, multiple different buying influences. It's a complex selling cycle. And it's an environment where change happens quickly. So I know a lot of brands are redesigning their sites sometimes annually, some or if not close. I want to understand a little bit better about, like, let's say that you're, fresh in the CMO seat at, a technology firm or a B2B, or really anything with multiple different types of buyers, and particularly technical ones, where lots of changes happening to the website. How do you go about sort of crafting the overall messaging strategy and then applying it in different types of scenarios where change is happening, such as a redesign, for instance?
Yeah. So, a good question. So one of the big things that we see when people go to redesign their site, because we are the website company, so I see this all the time, is that they are in a position where they're doing new messaging. There's a bunch of different reasons why people would want to redo their site. It could be a new CMO coming in with new vision. It could be that messaging is totally changing for the company. Maybe the company is going through an acquisition or a merger, and
Mhm.
their messaging has to be looked at, right? So are you merging your brands? Are you coming up with a new brand? Is it one brand being absorbed by the other? There's lots of different, I think, reasons. Maybe you're in you're in a category creation stage where you're trying to create a category, and
Mhm.
therefore, your messaging is changing to accommodate that. Or maybe you just want to polish up your brand, and that it's
Yeah.
time, right? It's time to relook at that messaging. To have a new image on your brand and a new look, because if you haven't done it in 3, 4, 5 years, it's probably outdated. I would
Yeah.
guess around that in terms of your brand, right? Especially the pace at which things change so quickly digitally.
Mhm.
So those are all kind of reasons why, and a lot of it driven by new messaging for kind of the time to update your site. The process for me in terms of always going through a messaging process is literally, it's a process. And it's
Mhm.
definitely starting with defining, you know, who is your target market? Who are those personas? What's the right message that you want to deliver to each of those personas? Because if you don't take the time to dive in and figure that out, your message is typically what I see is messages are way too broad.
Yeah.
And so today you can't do it. Like, one of the things I'm always saying is make sure that your website for your messaging is supporting the researcher that's coming in. We're all researching. How do we
Yep.
buy products now? I don't care whether it's B2B or B2C. You're
Yep.
buying it through research. You're not researching by calling somebody on the phone. You're researching by going online, going to people's sites, and
Yep.
going through, no matter what you are. I don't mean a title of a researcher, right? I mean, we're
Right.
all researchers, right?
Yeah.
So you better make sure that your messaging map supports the researcher journey, and that researcher journey is going to be different depending on who you are.
Yep.
If you're selling a product to a developer or technical type audience, that researcher journey is a little bit different. They don't want to be sold to, they don't want to be marketed to, right? You
Yep.
need to evangelize
Yep.
that particular audience, and you need to provide them real value. You better be giving them product specs and telling them how to do something and giving them tutorials and offering a community that they can participate and join. And so
Yep.
that's kind of one pillar of messaging to that particular audience. If you have a business audience or maybe like a marketer type audience, that message is different, right? You better be fast, you better be quick, but you have to have that value messaging that's in there. And no longer can we have that like jargon that we used to use for marketers, right? I like the nice thing about what's happened, I think, in the past year, a silver lining is that a lot of us have stripped out that jargoning in the message. So jargoning, I don't know, is that a word? But the jargon. And so I think that the bottom line for me on messaging is pick your audience, know who your audience is, develop a researcher journey to support that, and then figure out the way to kind of roll that out if it takes a relaunch, then relaunch your site.
I love that, Lynn. We could unpack that literally for hours. That's 3 minutes. That's all the time we have. I think definitely some very strong value bombs in there. We're going to keep going. You guys can see the show notes for the extras and or wherever you find your podcasts. But thank you. This was awesome. And Lynn, stay on the line. Let's keep jamming for a second. I do want to say I love a couple of the things that you said. Like the I hate like I despise boring copy. Like so much B2B copy is just so boring and so generic. And
I
it's just
know.
like,
I know.
the fully integrated, automated, AI driven buzzword. And it's just like, man, like come on. But I love that, the specificity. And I also one other thing that jumped out that you didn't say explicitly, but you did say was like the value of different content formats. So content aren't just always just headline and text.
Right, right.
Like to facilitate that researcher journey, which I really like that concept as well. Um, you'll need testimonials, you'll need pricing sheets, you'll need whatever more detailed case studies. Different people have different personality types. Like
Right,
you're
right.
familiar with like disc assessment or Myers Briggs.
Yep.
So that I think that was some really juicy nuggets in there.
All right. Was it okay
I
for
think it
you?
was great. Yeah, I
Okay,
think
good. Good, good. Happy about that.
absolutely. Hey, real quick on the nerdy tip. I just found the awesomest B2B prospecting tool,
You
which
did?
is similar to it's like a Clearbit in a way that it'll tell you what companies are visiting or the
Yep.
ones that it can match. But it goes down to the individual level.
Wow.
And it provides it's like really I think sounds almost like it should be illegal. I asked the guy if it was legal. He said it is in B2B, but it includes it includes like a URL trail of the entire user journey, including on third party sites. So you can see like on certain other websites what they're browsing. We're testing it right now, but it's called Lift Certain. But
Lift
I'll
what?
Lift Certain, like it's certain to provide a lift.
Yeah.
But we're testing it right now, and we'll probably. It's a very small company. I don't even know how we found them, but it looks pretty legit so far.
Awesome. Well, let me know how you do with it.
Yeah, we will for sure. Yeah, it could be useful. Like if you have a set like a BDR team that's kind of like, you know, smiling and dialing, and just going through a lot of numbers without much direction, or going through a lot of names without much like priority or direction.
Yep.
It could be a good little hit. Like, hey, here, call this one now.
I was looking it up because I have a old colleague who's been trying to get me to look at a product, but it's called Lift AI. Lift AI. So it's
Mm.
not the same thing. Well, cool. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the episode.